Well, it's only freezing outside and blowing like crazy, but we need to get out in the shop and work on this Humvee some more. Now, there's a few things I still need to do on here that are, you know, functional to driving it and everything too. And then there's some things that are not functional to the driving of it, but that sounds a little bit more fun to me, so I'm gonna work on that. In my head, I have a design for, come on, wind. Still rattling. So in my head, I have an idea of what I want to do for this type of bed rack system. Also, I want to bring it up over the top of the roof and come down in front of the A-pillars. Now, I have not really worked with tubing benders and tubing all that much. I've worked with exhaust tubing, that type of stuff. That stuff got easier as I worked with it, so I'm hoping this will too. Anyway, I have a design in my head, so I'm just gonna kind of wing it and go for it here. Let me show you what bender I have. I did not want to spend thousands of dollars on a bender, so I have... Whoa, you forgot to mention why this video is coming out so late compared to your other videos. Yes, that's right. I ended up catching those little spiky organisms that people are passing around lately. This seems familiar. Anyway, it knocked me down on my butt for a little bit, but of course I'm back up and going, as you can tell from this video. Well, let's get back to it. Now, I didn't want to spend thousands of dollars on a tubing bender, so I got an affordable bender. I did a lot of research before actually going with this brand. From the reviews and everything, this seems to be the best I could find for quality and affordability. So here we have the affordable bender. Now, as you can see from the front, I went with an 1 3/4" tubing. Now you can get multiple different dies for this. This is going to be a 7-inch radius for an 1 3/4", and it is a hydraulic type system. So the more you do this, the more it comes out. So you'll slide the tubing in the bottom, out and across, and it'll bend along that and come up. It has a roller on the back side there to keep the tubing straight as it bends. Before I really get to the pieces that I kind of want to bend, I'm going to go ahead and do a test piece. Alright, so I marked out my, I don't know if you can even see that, but I marked out my tubing on the length I need before the bend starts. Now I want about an 85-degree bend, so I'm actually just going to go ahead and do it all the way to 90. Once the bend's to 90, whenever you release it, there will be some snap back to it, which is what I want to anticipate in order to get about that 85 degrees. Yes, this tubing is a little short, and we'll end up actually having to kind of piece two together. We'll put a sleeve in there and weld it all up the way you're supposed to do for a roll cage, everything. Now, this isn't really a roll cage, it's kind of just a bed rack, so I'm not too worried about it. So if this actually was a roll cage though, I'd want to do this hoop all in one. Doing that sleeve will actually create a weak point in it. Again, for a bed rack system, I'm not too worried about that. This is 1 3/4", and it actually is the diameter for a roll cage at 1 3/4". But anyway, I'm going to set y'all down and get to bending this. Well, looks like I started bending that without actually hitting the record button, so now, recording. Alright, so one thing I'm finding out now, looks like this jack can't quite go to 90 degrees on here. So, well, let me see if I can get this to work right. Alright, there we go. I ended up making 4 the same bend. Those are for the back. Now the closer to 90-degree bends, those are for the front of the Humvee. Originally thought about running them down into these grooves and making a holder that sits in there, but I think it's going to be a lot easier if I go ahead and just run them on the top right here. Make a plate that goes there, weld it to that, and bolt the plate to there. Because as you can see, the edge of the Humvee, the windows on the doors are straight, and then once on the body it gets to that point, it kind of curves in a little bit. So that's why the back ones follow that curve, and the front ones are going to be a little bit more of a 90 because I want them to come up and then curve. That way I can make the top bar go over the top of the roof. So all of my bent bars that I need, well anyway right now the ones that I need are done and bent. The straight pieces will be the pieces on the top, and then I'll also do some cross bracing up top as well just to make it sturdier. As I was saying earlier, I was having a little bit of issues with getting this to actually go to a 90-degree bend because the jack that's on the bender wouldn't actually go past about 80 degrees. I have contacted the company on it, haven't had a response yet because they're closed on the weekends, but a way that I ended up finding out that I could kind of bypass that was go ahead, and you can see my mark here just a little bit. So that mark would be about where the clamp would hold it on the bender. I would end up bending it to the 80 degrees that it would let me, and then I would slide it just a little bit past that to about here and clamp it there and finish out the bend to about 90 degrees there. It seems to do fine doing that. It's not actually putting force there, just sliding it into it. And when you slide it in place, the actually kind of starts gripping it again right there. So it all worked out just fine. Now, eventually I'd like to get that fixed so I don't have to do that every time I do a 90-degree bend. But for now anyway, that works just fine. Alrighty, I kind of mocked up what we're going to be doing here. So we went ahead and put our internal sleeve in there, slid 2 ends together. We put a straight pipe there, clamped to that. Now you can, I don't know if you can even see the seam there, but that's to keep everything straight across the top. This bottom tubing I was using for the line, and then I switched it out for the string. So basically we put the string all the way across, and then we'll measure up to the tubing there in order to get our measurement on where to cut these. My intention originally was actually to use the longer pieces on the top, and the short pieces I was going to trim to the height. But here I kind of noticed that if I actually get this string about where it needs to be, our base width there is about right. So I'm laying it out this way first, see if we can get that base width out of it. If so, that's even less that I have to cut, and if not, I'll be turning one of these the other way, and then we'll basically trim the height, and then we'll come back in and trim the top for the width. Alright, I got the 2 pieces over here. I need to trim just the end of one of these just a little bit more. I went ahead and laid out the back piece now. For the back piece, our side legs won't have to be quite as tall because it'll stand straight up with the ground, 90 degrees with the ground. Our front back piece there has to lean forward, so those legs have to be a little bit longer. Alright, went ahead and labeled which kind of pillar each of these go to. So that's A, that's D, that's the back, and C next to the C pillar. Went ahead and did the same thing with A, cut it down. I needed to squish it in a little bit as well. Alrighty, decided to hook this little tubing notcher up. Went ahead and did one pass on there, cut it out pretty good. So I think that's a go on that thing. This thing's working pretty good. I just have it set to 0 right now. It'll go to 60 degrees if you need it at a different angle. I think most everything I'm doing here is actually going to be just regular 0 degrees. One thing on this, I don't know if it's on all of them or not, but on mine I needed to actually shim this a little bit to actually get it up to where it's in line with that tubing. Not a big deal, but you know, just something to be aware of if you're using something like that. So I'm going to continue to do this and get this piece cut. I want to see how that fits up on this other tubing. Alrighty, well here's a couple of pieces of scrap tubing, and well, look how that actually fits up together. It fits pretty nice. That'll make this, well, focus. That'll make this a lot easier to weld. So I did a scrap piece to learn, you know, what to do, what not to do. One thing I learned as well, you may not even be able to notice from the image, but one side is a little bit lower than the other, so it's like a T, but it's slightly tilted. So whenever I'm going to do the next ones, I'll go ahead and make just a circle all the way around it. That way I know where to start on the other side, so I get this nice and 90 degrees. And of course my drill battery died in the middle of that. So I guess I'll just leave that clamped to that for now while that charges, because my other battery is it's just dead. It won't even charge. So I'm only down to one battery, and whenever it goes out, it pretty much stops me in place. Well, you know, we got to keep it limbered up, so I'm going to take it for a ride around before I put it back up in the shop. Make sure everything's functioning still how it's supposed to be. That and, I mean, it's fun to drive, so I don't need an excuse. We'll test out how steady I can keep the camera also, because I haven't done this before either. Still running good. Alright, well, I'm going to put you all up so I can drive and not wreck into people here during what is kind of rush hour for a small town. Now we'll get back to creating this roof rack, but I'm going to need help with it, so it'll have to be another weekend. It'll have to be another episode. Anyway, I hope y'all like this episode, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see y'all next time. You know, if I could find a spot, I'd really like to see if this thing would do a burnout. But that's only if I can find a legal spot to do it.